I've never heard so much talk about such a nothing trade, but I do want to discuss Joe Milton with you. By the way, it's not only the Patriots fan base. It's it is other fan bases are like, why did we not trade for Joe Milton?
Jesus.
He could push our quarterback.
Yeah.
And I can't remember, like, teams with good quarterbacks, they're like, he could push them. And again, it's like, I know Milton played very well, and it was funny when he did. By the way, someone from a charity wants that jersey, so that jersey's gone. I said, go ahead and have it.
There you go. Yeah.
I said, what do I want with it? Go ahead and have it. Who even know if it's really for a charity, but whatever, the guy can have it. But and I know he played well in the last game, and I know I made a lot of a 6th-round pick. Now it doesn't seem so dumb. Everyone's like, he's harping on this 6th-round pick. Now it doesn't seem so stupid, does it, that I was doing that?
Nope.
Just to go back into retrospect, not because he did anything. And look, he played really well in the last game. It was funny. I know it was against what I said. But again, he's old. He's old. He's as old as Trevor Lawrence. He's old. And it's as old as Justin Fields. He's old. And he played 6 years of, played in quotation, 6 years of college. Yeah. He played basically a year of college. He started at Michigan. He got benched. And then he played at Tennessee the 1 year that they weren't good in recent history. By the way, with an offensive genius as their coach, like a guy who's an up-tempo, completely offensive coach at Tennessee. He was bad. Anyway, that's my thing. Why, Christopher Price, is this trade controversial that they just decided to cut bait with him and they didn't really gain anything back? Why is this controversial?
I'm glad you hit on the fact that he was old, and so I think he feels, at least internally, the clock is ticking a little bit. He's 25, as you mentioned. He's the same age as Trevor Lawrence, so I think that's part of the conversation. I think they could have waited a little while longer and gotten more. I don't know if they were completely aware, not necessarily of what they had, but the level of esteem that maybe he has with some people around the league. And I'm not saying that he could have, delivered a first-round pick or something, but, you hold on to him until the draft, or let's say he's a Labor Day trade where they can get maybe a fourth for him. Again, you're not going to get anything. I don't think you're going to get anything before a fourth. Joe's a unique character because I talked to a guy who covered him at Tennessee, and he described the Joe Milton experience in like 5 steps, where you see him and you fall in love with his physical abilities, and he's very engaging and
Can I stop you? I want you to go through the steps, but this is the thing in Tennessee. Like it's like, when someone dies, the 5 steps of acceptance, like the acceptance. Yeah. This is a thing that they do in Tennessee. Go ahead. Yes. More than one person has said this. Go ahead.
It's where you fall in love with his physical traits, and he's a very engaging guy. He's a very charismatic guy, and you get a coach that says, I can take him to the next level. I can make him work. And then you see him play consistently, and then you say, well, maybe he can't work. Maybe he can work on a part-time basis. And then after an extended period of time, you realize he really can't play at the level that maybe you hope he can play, and then you trade him. And so it's like this continuous cycle. It happened at Michigan. It happened to some extent at Tennessee, and it looks like New England kind of went through the same thing in the 1 year with him. I'll say this, man. I dug talking to him. He was a really good dude. There were multiple times this year where he kept talking once media availability was done, and Stacey literally kind of had to pull him away. So, in that respect, I'm going to miss him. But he's a unique guy, and so I think that, when you look at the need for quarterbacks around the league, and you look at a guy who does something like that, I can understand why all of a sudden it becomes a league-wide conversation, not just a New England conversation.
Okay, but where's Alex Van Pelt right now?
Rams.
Oh, yeah.
Rams.
Okay, so McVay, if anyone, they got an old quarterback. McVay's there. Alex Van Pelt is there. Why wouldn't the Rams want him? There's just a couple things. And also, Christopher, I mean, you know more about this than I do. If you have 6 years of film on a kid, they did their due diligence a year ago. Like, does being in Alex Van Pelt's system for a year and having that last game of the season, increase his draft value that much in 1 year?
No, I don't think it increased it that much in 1 year. I think that.
Then why hang on to him? If you just want to get rid of him, then why hang on to him?
Well, you hang on to him because this is something that Vrabel has said on multiple times this offseason. He wants to kind of quote-unquote increase the competitive level in that room and have guys push each other. Vrabel had one of my favorite quotes of all time was that when Vrabel, he used to watch the draft as a player, and he said, I watch the draft because I want to see who they're going to try and replace me with. And I asked him about that, and he said it's all about competition. It's all about pushing guys. It's all about making that locker room better. And you would think that, to your point, if you had a guy like that in the locker room, look, he's never going to take over for Drake May. I think everyone understands that. But, maybe he pushes May a little bit and, helps May get to another level. So, look, there's a lot of different things here. When you talk about Joe Milton and you talk about his 1 year in New England and, the return they could have gotten for him and what kind of prospect he is, I just think the timing was off. And again, that competitiveness, I think they should have hung on to him a little while longer.
Okay. Have you heard anything, Chris, about Milton? And you said you like talking to him. Have you heard anything about Milton and his communication with the team here recently? Like, was there any communication between him and Vrabel about this stuff, or was it as much about him just wanting out because he understood the writing on the wall and he wanted to leave and it was going to be untenable in that regard?
I think he wanted to leave. I talked to someone who was very close to him. I think he wanted to leave, and there were a handful of teams who were part of that conversation where he could have, like Dallas was one of those teams. I know Tennessee, at least very early on, was a possibility. The thing about Dallas really doesn't give him a chance to compete for a starting job. I mean, it's not like there's a big quarterback question there if Dak Prescott's healthy.
But so if they're the only team that actually wanted him and would give anything for him.
There you go. Exactly, Hardy. That's the other part of it. That if Dallas was the only team who was willing to give you what you were looking for at this stage, and that goes back to my original thought that, hey, maybe they should have waited a while longer. Maybe someone gets hurt, over the course of the summer, over training camp. Yeah. They need a quarterback. Or, around the draft. People get jittery around the draft if they miss out on a quarterback. So I just think the timing of the whole thing is just odd for me.
Okay, so here we are. Cam Ward's going number 1. Now there's rumors Travis Hunter's going number 2. Now the Patriots are interesting territory because you have the Giants who obviously got Thibodeau.
Brian Burns.
And then they got Brian Burns in free agency. Those are 2 pass rushers. They spent a high first-round pick on Thibodeau. Now it would be kind of a redundancy. I'm going to ask you your opinion. If you're a GM, is that too much of a redundancy on a bad team, or do you draft Abdul Carter just because he's the best player?
I draft Abdul Carter because he's the best player. If Abdul Carter's getting to number 4, someone out there is going to get fired. I'll put it to you that way. Abdul Carter is that good. And I've heard you guys talk about this before. Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter are the 2 guys that you would kind of go off the board for in terms of need because they're so good at what they do. You get Abdul Carter in the building, and you have him figure it out. You can figure out how to work. If you're the Giants with those 2 guys because he's a unique player, he's a special player. So I don't think that Carter is getting to 4. And I think if he's there at 3, I think the Giants would be crazy if they didn't take him.
Yeah, and that makes sense. Okay, so, boy, the Patriots. Talk about Joe Milton screwing the Patriots. All right, so
4th pick in a 3-player draft.
Yeah, right, and exactly. In a pick where all of a sudden a quarterback is going number 1, and now you're really you could have gotten out of that. I mean, they could have gotten something for that.
They could have gotten some serious draft capital if they had the number 1 overall.
Yeah, they could have gotten something. I don't know if it would have been like some historic haul, but yes, they could have gotten something. So here they are at 4. Again, do people talk about like people trading up and things like that? I don't see anyone possibly taking Shedeur Sanders until 9. Is 4th a position that you believe that now as we get closer to the draft that's a position people would want to trade into?
I'll say this: the Patriots want to trade out of 4,
sure,
especially if Hunter and Carter are not there. I think if they can't trade out of 4, I think you're looking at someone in the Will Campbell, Mason Graham, maybe Ted McMillan universe at number 4, where you would say, okay, look, these guys are not necessarily, the lead guys, the ones we want at the top of this draft, but at the same time, these are guys who will do what they can do to address needs on our roster. So It's not a great position to be in this draft, honestly. And I think, again, if they had their druthers, they'd probably trade down to maybe the late stages of the top 10, maybe, the 10 or 12 and, pick up an extra pick and go get one of those tackles. Or, I will say this. I do think there's a possibility. I think there's a really good possibility they'll trade up from 38. And then there's going to be a run on tackles in the late stages of the first round that they could get in on. Someone who might be, whether it's Josh Connerly or Simmons, or if Banks falls that far. I don't think he's going to fall that far, but I think they're going to have a shot at getting one of those tackles there toward the end of the first round with that 38th pick. I think it's easier to move up out of 38 than it is to trade down from 4 this year.
All right. Well, Christopher Price, great stuff as always. Always stuff going around with the Patriots. We always appreciate the time. Thanks so much, sir.
Appreciate it, Freddie. Take care, guys.
If you like that clip, and how could you not? Check out more videos from Toucher and Hardy here. Point slightly up and to the left. For more Patriots analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. Point slightly down and to the left. And for the latest from the Sports Hub, download at 985thesportshub.com.